You can see my screen, right?
Yep.
I'm sorry, one sec. Okay, I'll just start. Is it the background noise too bad?
That's okay.
Okay, cool. I think they will stop talking in a sec. So I'm Emanuel. I'm a freelance light and video designer, visual artist, and light operator. And I have a background in more in theater actually, and then I studied light techniques, and I just finished the study at the high school of arts in Amsterdam, which called design technology. I specialized in light and video design. Um, and today I'm gonna talk about three live video art example projects where I created some different tools. Um, and there you also see that some things will come back from one project to the other. I'll talk about digital. It's all in Netherlands, and this so it's digital, which is a electronic dance music festival in Amsterdam, and I did a show for a very cool band called Weevil at the Down Rabbit Hole Festival, also in Netherlands. And the last thing is I created a system for Chris Core at Draaimolen 10 years anniversary and Holy Pink. And at the end of the presentation, I think I'll dive into the patches a little bit if I have time. So the first project is digital. I was asked by Boris Arquette and Studio Raito to do make live video and live visuals, and also to create a system for this cool installation. It's I think it was 104 screens of so it was a lot of towers with every tower at 8 screens, and then there was no light, so everything needs to come from these screens. And then it's more of a light object actually than really like a VJ screen. So I wanted to create like light chases more, but then like movement through the space. And then let's see. So for this system, like I said, it was I didn't want to create for all the screens different kind of animations, so I created a delay system um, with cache, like a cache delay system with a replicator system. So I created for one screen, I created a visual, and then I delayed it either over a tower or over all the grid, or both at the same time. And then way I could create the different patterns over the space. So for instance, this will be one tower, and this is all the towers next to each other. So I could change the way it moves through the space and how much delay there is, and shuffle that. Or yeah, it was just a very fun live system. and and then I sort of created some cool fun animations. It was very heavy music, so there's a lot of flashing. It's very heavy techno, so very flashy, high tempo visuals. Let's see. I used like this was my old setup where I used fader Fox with a lot of tape and labels, um, where I could say like, this was for the input for the more generative content. Well, I'll dive in later a little bit, and then I had just a simple square where I could say I want 3 lines or squares or 7, and then I had the cache, like the delay system over one tower, and another delay system over all the towers. You could change the modes and add some post effects. Yeah, more post effects and changing the color. And then I used the sequencer, which I will talk about later, to be able to put for instance, like an organic visual on one bar and then on an outline of the screens on the another bar timing. So on the snare, for instance, and on the kick, and it works very well, I think, for this dance music. Then the second project was for Wevo, which is an electronic music duo. They asked me to make content and to operate it live at the festival. And I also used like a live camera. I used the PTZ pan tilt zoom camera to be able to capture their operating with the instruments and then bring that out to the public with some cool effects. And this was controlled by Daniel. So for this festival, for the content I created, like for every song I created a different engine, and then I recorded, for instance, this one was I recorded some or echolin. I don't know what I think echolin is the English word for it. To an oil in some water source, and then I filmed it and put some weird effects over it for some songs, and then and then I made a camera effect to have them have their faces or their fingers with the instruments fly over the screens. And for this, because I wanted to have a different song, different visual, with one concept, of course, but different visual for every song. I wanted to switch, be able to switch very fast from one visual to the other. So I had if this is a custom UI, I think I built it half a year ago for Lumis Instruments. It's based on the launch control Excel because everyone has it, and you have 9 encoders and 3 faders, and then again 9 encoders and 3 faders, which is based on this setup, and then some post things on this side. So you could see what knob and what fader you push. And then if you change to another song, and then you know, oh, this is not the speed anymore, but it's the color change or some other kind of effect. So in that way, I could have one song ready here, and then change to the other song on the other bank. If it makes any sense. And then I had some post effects again on my mixer, and I've merged the cameras on this side of the mixer. This is also ran a redundant system with a second laptop, so I could just plug over the MIDI controllers, and then everything would still work, and the HDMI's, of course. And people my colleague could see the preview, the cameras, and also see what I did with them to be able to make sure that the cameras were in the right angle, because you could move them from here. So that was Wevo. I'm rushing through, I see. Then the last project, which I will, before I dive into the networks, is called Primo 10 years anniversary. And they asked Chris Gore to make visuals for them, but she had no experience in live, like not a lot of experience in live operating them, especially in TouchDesigner. So she asked me to make a system for her that she could like manipulate all her different kind of visuals and get some well, be able to use one kind of visual for an hour and then have a lot of parameters to make it interesting. So again, I used she had one engine on this side and other engine on the other side, and she could merge them as well. It's all again based on this launch control. And it was very important for her to not need to dive into the network and see what did I make, but just to like play around freely. So she could see, oh, if I turn like this encoder, it will change the speed. If I change the want to change the grain, then oh, I need this one. And then she could like mask, change the way they multiply to each other if they want, if they're both live. And let's see, it was again very heavy electronic music. So that we see that here probably a lot of flashing. And then you could make like live masking, but I think I'll show that better in when I dive into the network. And for this was also very nice. She could have like audio reactivity for every patch. There was some, not every, but almost a lot. Every patch that had some audio reactivity, and she could say, "Oh, here is you could." She could see like, every different elements of the low, high, kick, and snare, and then she could change the with the knob on the launch control. She could change different different audio, select different audio things. Um, I'll show it. I think when I dive in, it's a bit easy to understand. I think for me, because everything needs to be live, and I do a lot of things for dance music. And this is a lot of dance music is of course based on a drum sequence or a sequencer. And you can just see it loops, and every you have 8 bars, and every bar you can set an accent, and there's like a kick on the 1 and a snare on the 4, and that way it's very it feels nice to be able to give accents to these to this music. So that's why Lumos Instruments created a visual and a sequencer. So is nog misschien voor ik ben het team is klaar. Dan dat super bedankt. Sorry about that. So for instance, now you see there's like a pulse, a sharpening on the screen, and every time it hit this little light, I get a pulse, and then I have that for eight different tracks. So shout out to Lumos Instruments. We gave me this sequencer. We'll build it. So I like you have 8 tracks of envelopes coming in at OSC data, and then you could just say, oh, I want to change the pulse for one track 1. I want to change the pulse from one key to another to change the accents, and then of course in this music you have a break, so I could open a fader to stop all the pulses. Let's see. So I'm gonna open it up in a sec, and then you see now it's all pulsing, and then I open the fader, and it's all stops pulsing, and then I add another fader which noises it, so you have like a strobe when the beat comes back in. And then the last thing for the sequencer, which make a lot of fun, is you have an attack for every track, envelope track. You have an attack, sustain, and release, which were on these encoders. So you could say I want a very heavy clap and then easy release. So that I use this a lot with all my projects to be able to play around with this dance music and give accents to different elements of the music, and then select like one could just give an accent with the sharpening or a blur, or at the digital project I said like, oh, the first track is for organic network and the second is for more just the square or outlining, yeah, so it was a lot of fun. So and they're great light designers as well. So it's a lot of fun. Now they didn't pay me to promote this actually. It's just me being very enthusiastic about it. So now I dive into these three networks. Okay. Um, so let's see. Start with digital. So this is I learned this from YFX. This is a way of organizing your network. YFX, they're based in Amsterdam. They're very fun people. I think one of them is in this room as well, Roy. So shout out to them. They told me to like organize it in this way to have like a control um, to have a control place to say, oh, I want like there. This is where all the data comes in and or out. So this is where the OC comes in from the sequencer, and this is where the MIDI from the controllers come in, chains or the audio, and sometimes DMX. And this is also where sometimes the internal sequencer or some animations would be in. This is that for some reason. So that's the control surface. Then you have a world container where all the different visuals are being created. So like all the engines are as in post edit, and then like for instance the square, which I'll talk about a little bit later, and some animations, and then you have the core, which is all the post effects. So this is where the world comes in, and I put some post can be able to put some post effects in, so different post effect engines, and change the color, brightness, contrast, and blurring. And then for digital, this is also where I did the delay system for every tower. So for instance, like it's quite basic, just one visual, and then eight screens, and then I could say, let's see, then if it would go out, it would every screen would have their own delay based on this pattern. And then it's then again over the whole field of all the screens of the 104, this like overall 104 screens. And now this is a fun thing I added made by Bileam, um, which worked also gave a lot of fun to this thing for this big grid for of all the screens. Um, and then to be able to not dive in this network, I created a, a UI that's 3 years ago. Now I made a different UI. But this is an old UI where I could just say, oh, this is my input one. I could preview a visual and then switch to it, and it became live. Or like this, I could change it, and then this would be changed by MIDI controllers mostly. Then I had like an animation, which is not, and then it's not playing right now, but it could wipe the image. So, yeah, then you have like a little animation over the screen. It's just very simple but effective for be able to make the visuals a little bit dynamic. And then I had a delay system for the grid. Well, with also some blurring, lumen blurring, because that looked fun, and then I had I see it here as well, happening on the right side. The whole delaying, I could say, oh, I want one long square, and I want four above each other, or no, I want them to be next to each other. I don't know. It was a lot of fun to just be able to make these things live, because sometimes you want different forms, and it works better to just generate them in real time, and then add some outline effects. Then I have post effects where I can preview the post effects and also see how they composite or change how they composite. Some settings for outputting the screens and changing the resolution, BPM, and audio, changing the sound color and that kind of stuff. But again, this is an old UI. It looks very ugly, but it was a lot of fun and helped me a lot of times. But now for the other projects, I made it more beautiful. Okay, I'll try to go a little bit faster because I think I'm almost out of time. I made it's the same approach, but a different UI. So again, control, world, core, and then UI. And this is all the different engines, and then some external inputs. She could give all the names, and then change, select which effect runs and effect A and effect B. This is, of course, based on this UI system. Let's see. So then you can just see how the visuals would work. This is a beautiful visual made by Chris. I could multiply multiply these things and see want to change the period, and this works from the controller, of course, but also from the screen. And if you want to change something, you can just type in the network or just choose a different visual. And then all the names would change as well. And then this is where some you can make your own masking. Again, it's a little bit the same as the solid square thing. But say, oh, I want it only in this part because I think it's very important when you have a big LED screen. You don't want your things flying out over the whole screen the whole time. This is a very intuitive way of making your masks. Let's see. Do you have a little time left over, or is this? Oh, okay. Then, then talk a little bit about. Let's see. Let's see. Then I think I can talk about the last project. Yeah. Oh, yeah. By the way, I didn't mention all these. I think you all recognize these very nice encoders. They are, of course, made by Bileam. I stole them. And they make it look quite organized, I think. So shout out to Bileam, of course. Then last project for Weavon. I had a set list of 11 songs, and then again same principle. Then I had the camera coming in, the NDI camera, and then I could see preview the visual and then open it up to the screen. And I also some cues. I think this doesn't work now without my MIDI controller. Well, anyhow. So this was the recording, and then that made it a lot of fun to say, okay, I have this image, and then during the whole song, I have 9 encoders to make the visual to develop this visual according to the music. And for it, so again, same principle. And because I think most of you, maybe some of you know, with the LED screens, it's a lot of hassle mapping them. So I made like a little mapping system, which was a chaos, but it worked. And I could just say I could let's see, I could over because it's very important, of course, to have to be sure that your visuals laid out in the correct way. I could overlay the mapping to check at the spot if everything is correct. And then this is where the output is. Yeah, I think that's all. That's all I can show. It was a lot of tech talk, I think. I don't know. I also like to talk about the creative part. I guess this is also more about like the VJ tools. So that's it.
Thank you so much. Very, very cool work. Very nice to see. I think it's quite impressive how versatile it is, like for all the different kind of stages and screens, especially also obviously for the LED setups from the thumbnail as well. Really, really cool. I'm wondering, for those LED like sort of towers that you had, did you have some kind of preview system, or did you work on stage to like to create the visuals?
Yeah, so I think I used I think I just visualized it because you have the output map where you have all the rows laid out and next to each other, and I looked at how this would work, but it was not. I didn't have any like 3D render to how it looked to the space, but I had some like a few hours to program it on the spot as well, so I could just change uh, the setup of how the how it's all laid out. Yeah. I guess I could just, if someone asks for it, I can send it. I'm not I'm not the only problem with that, then I also need to make sure it still keeps working. But yeah, it's I'm open to share, of course, because I think it's a lot of fun to just share everything with everyone, and also because you have this launch control, people can load their like the SY as setup of how which parameter is what MIDI control, and then you can just use it. But it's very that's not very bug friendly now. It has a lot of bugs, let's say it like that. And so I also use it for working when I work for Loomis Instruments, and they have a lot of oh, actually, I forgot one thing else. So I need to be there a lot to make sure it still keeps working, but it's quite stable right now. And this was the last slide. And so I don't want to forget to thank you for be able to present my work. And this was some other projects which I couldn't talk about, of course. But some other kind of things, art installations and performance, or visual performance. And my favorite like VJ event of the year is ADE Store with a 7-hour improvisation of musicians, and then 4 video artists or 3 video artists and live cameras, and then it's a lot of fun.
Thank you so much. And
Yeah,
yeah,
thank you so much.
if you guys all have, guys and girls, have any questions, then just note them down, and you can ask Emmanuel later in the breakout rooms. And we'll now continue with Jack, aka Anti-Alias.
All right. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yep.
Cool. Cool. Thank you, Bileam, for having me out. Really excited to be able to present on AAVJ, which is what I'm going to be talking about today. AAVJ is a tool that I've been developing. Just before I get too far into it, I just want to make sure that the output it's not flipped. It looks like mirrored on my screen, but can you guys read that? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Awesome. AAVJ is a tool that I've kind of been developing as I have been learning TouchDesigner. I've been inspired by many awesome TouchDesigner programmers, a lot of which are in this room today. So I just want to say thank you for everybody who contributed to inspiring me on my journey. AAVJ is a real-time mixer, VJ mixer created entirely in TouchDesigner that allows users to mix real-time media with an intuitive and familiar workflow. I started off using Resolume for VJing animations that I was creating in Cinema 4D. And as many of us can probably relate to, waiting for rendering can be a very impatient and frustrating process, and that's kind of how I found TouchDesigner, and kind of haven't stopped ever since. I loved the workflow of Resolume, and shortly after finding TouchDesigner, I found the amazing software Simple Mixer, made by none other than Richard Burns. Very elegant solution for mixing TouchDesigner content. So I found that very inspiring, and I was always very curious about creating interfaces and how that worked. So I decided to kind of start creating my own, and this is where it's kind of developed since then. AAVJ has a number of key features. One major feature that I really wanted to implement into my software was being able to mix large numbers of layers, at least multiple layers. And so I built that in to the point where it's kind of dependent on your hardware, but comes with 5 layers by default, and users can add more as they choose. It's also got a fully mappable UI for MIDI and OSC and really any other sort of chop data inputs that you want to map to the user interface. I've also allowed for windows that allow for drag and droppable custom components. As we know, creating custom components is a huge benefit of TouchDesigner, and I wanted to, keep it as modular and expandable as possible to the community, just to see what kind of amazing things people make, what kind of plugins or components people can drop in there. There's also a number of parameters for project customization that we can get into in just a little bit. Some of these at a high level are the UI resolution. You can choose a UI resolution. You can also choose a render resolution, and you can also choose a display resolution to work with the resources you have, but also be able to output in larger formats, etc. As well as some fun things like changing the UI color and being able to customize that a bit. One more key feature that I created after being limited by my hardware for a long time was VRAM management. After lots of learning Python and Python scripting and digging through the forums, shout out Matthew Reagan and all sorts of other amazing developers on those forums. AAVJ implements a script that will collapse your content into a compressed state when they're not being used. It does this by reaching into the network and finding all of the tops in that network and compressing them to an eighth of their resolution in order to cut back on VRAM and kind of allow for the GPU to have a little bit more breathing room when it starts to get filled up with content. AAVJ also implements NDI and spout outputs. So there are some dynamic panels that allow you to create outputs directly from the interface from really anywhere in your project, any of the layers, including the master layer. And you can also designate whether you want that to be pre-blend or pre-composite or post-composite of the other layers in your project. So, and there's also another menu on the right you'll see that allows for OSC inputs and outputs to both map the interface as well as send triggers from elements in the interface to send out to, say, Resolume or Notch or whatever other software that used in tandem with AAVJ. AAVJ currently supports TOX files, images, video, notch blocks, and I'm working on getting DMX ArtNet capability kind of living within the interface. Some of these features are definitely still in development, particularly images and video, but you can really create a TOX container wrapper for any sort of network that TouchDesigner is compatible with and drag and drop them directly into the interface, just like you would with any other generative networks with TouchDesigner. And so now I can jump into the actual interface and show a little bit of that workflow right here. And let's switch over. All right. So you'll see that the interface probably looks familiar to a lot of you. It's, like I said, I came from a Resolume background and I really love that workflow. And I really kind of felt like why reinvent the wheel as in that sense. And so I developed the interface in a way that was kind of mappable in symmetry with Resolume to leverage both software in both video playback or in real-time generative media playback. And this is where we've kind of gotten so far. So from a high level, you'll see that we have multiple layers here, 1 through 5. On the left side of each layer, you'll see that we have some layer controls where we can, launch different cells and clear them. We can adjust our fader parameters. We've got blend modes, like you'd expect, to blend between the different layers. You've also got transition controls to be between, each piece of content as you go along, as well as some fader filtering over here that, if it wants to work, it should filter your faders so you don't get solid like static jumps and other kind of hangups like just happened just now. You've also got some column launching capability in case you wanted to create scenes that have multiple layers and be able to launch them all at once. And then you can navigate your project here with the scroll bar to have many different cells of content mapped out in your project. At the top left here, we have our master level fader that will control the level of your master output of your project, as well as a master clear button that will kind of clear everything and black out your output. In the bottom, you'll see where our parameters of our custom content will populate, which I'll get into in just a moment, as well as some addable widget panels where you can drag custom components that you build that can live directly within the interface and can be accessible at any time. On the right side, you'll see over here we have our effects panel. And similar to the cells up here, we can drag in effects over here, and these all serve as basically a dry wet for that effect, and those parameters will populate over here on this page. In the top right, we'll see we have our project settings where we can customize which display we want our user interface to be on and which display we want to display our output on. So we can enable and disable output. We can choose how big we want the UI resolution. We can also adjust how many layers we want, how many slots that we want in our project, as well as how many effect slots. And we can also change the color of our interface in case we want to run multiple instances of AAVJ and be able to keep track of what's going on where. You'll see that our VRAM cleanup script is enabled in our project, and so that's something to consider as we go along. Here we have our NDI output and spout output menu where we can freely add NDI outputs from anywhere our project, as well as OSC inputs from really anywhere in our environment. Those inputs will all be routed into our link system, which is the system that will detect what the last value changed is that you'd like to map to any sort of container. And so you can enable the link system by hitting the little chain link up here. And since we see our values here, these are keyboards 1, 2, and 3. It's already mapped that. That's great. But we can map, any sort of cell or whatever we want into our project and be able to easily use a MIDI controller or really any sort of signals that you route into your project for mapping the interface. So with that being said, let's drop a piece of content into our network or into our project. I'm just going to drop something in here. Okay, let me scroll over a little bit. So I'll get into just a moment, but I'll drop a piece of content in here and you'll see it populate. And now I can click that to enable it. Oh, I think I'm actually paused, so that would make a lot of sense. Here we go. Okay. So now you'll see we've got some content playing. As I right click, you'll see that we have a number of parameters that we can then, adjust in real time and do all sorts of fun stuff down here. I will drag in another piece of content right here next to that, and you'll see that we can transition between any sort of content we have available. Pretty standard functionality there. And another feature that AAVJ implements is the ability to navigate into anywhere into the network. So if I right click on any of these pieces of content and hit Control N, we'll open a floating plane window. And that will allow us to actually go into our network, make any adjustments that we want to make. And then those adjustments will be saved when we save our project to the talks that we're working on. So let's put something here. Like I said, Richard Burns, your software is awesome, and I really learned a lot from picking it apart, and I really loved your solution as far as creating talks content. And so I've basically leveraged that same format where it's really just a talks container with an out one top, and this is going to be where AAVJ will reach in and find the content that you want to be displaying, as well as just a simple fit top
And so I've basically
that I usually
leveraged that-
scale down to 256 by 256 to save on VRAM. But just basically a fit top that's locked named thumb, and that will serve as our thumbnail for that piece of content. And so this control N functionality, it's really handy in that it also allows you to, build generative, generative looks directly into the interface. So if I say 1920 by 1080, let's say circular, get this moving a bit, fit top name thumb. Put outside, there we go. We'll see that we already have, a piece of content directly in here. So I use this a lot in iterating on different looks, being able to take networks and kind of borrow them and paste them throughout the interface. And you can also use these as generative masks where you can switch the blend mode and, really kind of explore in that sense. So yeah, being able to utilize a lot of different layers, it's definitely, you have to be conscious about your hardware. I think the streaming right now is maybe tanking my frames a little bit. But also, I just want to also mention that some of these looks that I'm using right now are made possible with the amazing toolkit by Tommy Etkin called RayTK, which allows you to do Raymarch shaders in a node-based networking. So shout out to all his work on that. I really appreciate that a lot. And use it in all of my shows for the most part. I'll show an example of a custom component that you can drag and drop in here. So this is just a very simple network that you can drag in. And so say you wanted to monitor some sort of geometries that you're using in your network, or say that you're receiving signals from elsewhere in the network, you can create a custom component here. And I'll show you, I can open this floating plane. It's just a box with a geo, not really doing too much, but the way that these custom components work is that you're able to create a global op shortcut on the widget itself and basically access that information from any of your other content that lives inside your project. So instead of receiving all of that data in every single scene and having to process all of that individually, you can basically receive it in one place, and then all of your content basically finds that data using the global op shortcuts. Effects are very similar to pieces of content. They use the same structure as the content with an out one and a fit top named thumb, but there's just one other designation. Let's see if I can find an effect. I'll just pop one in there. Let's see, chroma. Sure. Do that. So if I drag this in, you'll see that our parameters show up here. And this is a very simple RGB delay, but you can stack, multiple effects on each layer. Then you also have a layer here for the master, which then you will apply to all of your layers below it. And these are, sort of like a dry wet for that. Let's see. There's also the ability for some pop-out menus that will allow you to designate that you want a certain container to send OSC triggers out from your interface that you can designate up here in our OSC menu. Set up an OSC output, put in the port number, etc., and enable that. You can also update the thumbnails as well as resetting individual containers. There are currently some hiccups when you do kind of operations like that, when you clear a lot of operators at one time. But it's just something to consider as you build your project, placing things out ahead of time and just working with the limitations. But that's and then the last thing I'll get into that we'll see here is that we have our VRAM being monitored down here in the bottom left. And we'll see that once I hit a third one of these containers, that should jump because this one was collapsed. And then if I hit another one, you'll see that we lose even more VRAM. So your VRAM is being accessed and compressed on the fly to manage VRAM and give you a bit more overhead. You'll see that once you've loaded in the network, it typically comes in pretty much no problem. Depending on the size of your network in the beginning, sometimes you get some hiccups. And also if your scenes are heavy, you might get some frameage going on. But yeah, it's dependent on hardware and how you use the project and etc. And displaying outputs are pretty much as easy as just going here, designating that I want my output to be on display 2, and then hitting output enabled, and we'll see that our output is sent to this screen. One thing that I faced in trying to create this output system is that Windows was kind of giving this like black hiccupy effect when you would go from one window to another. And digging through the forums, I found this really clever solution by making it minus 1 pixel on the Y direction, and which is pretty not noticeable at all, but it also it keeps Windows from doing the black screen and not having to focus on like one window in particular, which I found to be pretty stable during performance. I guess I can dig into the network side of things. If I can, there we go. I tried to make the structure as decipherable as possible. So we come in here, we've got a lot of our, project assets over here and functionality, scripts, styling, some assets that live within the interface. But other than that, we've got our sections of our interface here. I can come in here, go through our layers, and here we've got multiple layers that have, our different cells that we can drop content into. Currently, to add more layers, you basically will just copy and paste more layers into this chain. I've had up to 10 simultaneous layers during testing, but again, obviously this will be dependent on hardware, depending on what you want your startup time to be like, etc. A lot of Python scripting involved in this interface. Most of everything is custom built into this project. It was a very fun, arduous experience that I think I made work for this version. But I'm hoping to maybe convert over to a widget-based system for the next iteration to allow for different components made by the community to be compatible with it, and just overall clarity. But yeah, you'll see everything. I kind of tried to lay things out in a way that people could decipher, understand, add on to. And then you have your master output here, which you can do whatever with. Yeah, so I think that's, for the most part, a pretty basic overview of AAVJ. I've used it for a ton of my gigs for over the last few years, different iterations and versions, and uh, I've rebuilt it like 5 times. So, and I've also have plans to do it again. So call me crazy, but I think it gets better every time I do. Um, so I will maybe jump back to my presentation here. And just as a final thing, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody. You know, AAVJ was inspired by the work of so many of all of you: Richard Burns, Resolume, Team, Matthew Reagan, Bileam, Lucas Morgan, Eric Mitzer, Tommy Etkin. So many of you who have, you know, I've learned so much from, and you know, have been inspired to create this interface from. So, and as well as the AAVJ user community, I really appreciate all the support from all of you guys, and I hope that we continue to grow and learn from each other. And so, yeah, anybody who's interested, feel free. I can post a link, and happy to have you in the Discord.
Wow. Very, very impressive. Thank you. Thank you for your
Thank you.
presentation. Yeah, beautiful UI. I'm really into beautiful UIs. It's very, very clean, and yeah, just well done. And I totally feel you on the rebuilding it for like many times. I also did that with my tool, and then totally it gets better every time, and you learn so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things I could say now. I think we can do that later. One thing that really popped out for me was the kind of direct creation, the thing that you showed, that you could just open up a network and you can like add a ramp, and then you have like a network very quickly. It looks really cool for maybe like a long VJ performance, where you just have to get creative and add some more things. So beautiful. I'm very excited to try it out
Thank you.
myself as well. Yeah, all right. So let's continue with last but not least, Richard Burns. And then after that,
Hello.
you have time for some questions.
Okay, so speaking of rebuilds, that's what I'm going to show today, a rebuild. So, yeah, hang on a minute, let me share that screen. Oh, no, not that screen. Not. There we go. Okay, so my name is Richard. I'm the director of a company called Rich and Me. We're based in Tokyo. And we're a multidisciplinary studio working with TouchDesigner, with Notch. We use Disguise, Resolume, we use pretty much everything. So, you know, it's just anything in that interactive AV kind of space is what we're doing. So if you want to have a look at our work, you can have a look at our website here. It's richandmew.com. But that's as far as presentation wise, as far as we're going to go. Yeah, so I built a tool called Simple Mixer, which was also been mentioned earlier. It's a tool was created in 2009, and it was open source in 2018. So it's a very old VJ mixing platform. But if you wanted to try it out, then you can go to my GitHub, Simple Mixer. You can find it here. And the master branch is the official build version, and there might be some issues with it because it hasn't been updated in a while. There is, however, now, as of 3 days ago, I've just rebuilt for the new experimental version of TouchDesigner. There's a branch here called 1.5, and 1.5 is a complete rehaul of the UI and a few new features in there as well. So I'm going to show through that today and then explain how Simple Mixer works and all the rest of that kind of thing. So this is the UI. Let's open it for you guys to see this. Okay, so you should be able to see this. So at the moment here, this is also a custom user interface. We're not using widgets yet, but it's basically the original version of Simple Mixer has a bunch of widgets that allow you to mix visuals, mix custom tops. It's a bit like AAVJ. It has a tox setup using an out one and a thumb top, and then when you bring those into the project folder, you can then load those in. So the main component, if I go, you have two tabs. You have the show tab and the mapping tab. And the main part of the show tab is there's two banks. These are just Beeple clips, so it's just loading movies in right now. And in the asset browser down here, you can go in, you can choose a movie, you can drag it up, and it's going to blend into that movie from the one that you've already got, and you can turn them off and on, like so. So if you want, you can just have one, and then you've got a master crossfader between those. So if I go here, I could have two visuals, and then I can blend between them on the master fader. And then if I want to have two layers, essentially, then we can have up to two layers. And then we can choose a blend mode on those layers, and that will allow you to blend between those different effects. If I have to, yeah, I can also do that, and then I can blend between. So that's how you load in movies. There's also tox files are supported as well, notch blocks, and then I have post effects, which are, again, they have their own template as well, where they have an in top and then an out one top, and as long as you follow the structure of the template, then you can make your own post effects. And at the moment, I only have one loaded in called Bananagram, which was built during one of the summits in Berlin, I believe, many years ago. But yeah, so this is just a post effect, and you can enable, you've got up to 10 post effects, and they can be enabled here, or 10 are in this post effects panel. So if I enable a post effect, that happens on the final output. So yeah, that kind of creates a filter on everything. So to affect those, then I can go in and I can start to look at an output viewer here if I want to see my output as a bigger visual. And then I also have previs stage, which I'll talk about later. But we also have different parameters. So we have the movie parameters. If I load a tox in, if I load in just a tox here, you'll see that you have the parameters will just update for whichever is the top left, bottom left, top right, or bottom right bank. So we can do that. And you can open and close them there. So you can have multiples open at once, or you can have just one open, and they all load in with their parameters. There's then also a post effects parameter window, which allows you to choose which post effect you want to modify. And you've got 3 of those if you want to stack them, so you can load up multiple post effects there. So the main way that I generally control things with audio reactivity in here is to actually take the parameters. Turn this on a sec over here. I'll take some parameters. So for example, this is a live set on a projection map stage, and I would have a parameter here, and if I want, I can open up the audio analysis system, and that would allow you to drag and drop and just reference something, and now I have an audio reactive parameter is driving itself, and obviously that can be changed using this. This is the same as the audio analysis from the palette. It's been upgraded from the older version to be this one because it's more modern and it's more efficient. And you can activate either the low, mid, kick, snare, and the rhythms. So you can activate all of them, and then you can choose which one you want to, to hook up, and you can just hook them up. So any parameters or any toxes you bring in can be set to that. So I've got like an over there, so now I've got this sort of projection map set thing going on, and then I can choose my different blend mode and mix it all up. And the reason I'm doing the projection map set is because there's a new feature where now we can do projection mapping in Simple Mixer. So I now have a previous setup, which when I click on that, you can see here that I can choose between these different screen assets and a different props asset. A screen is what the content gets mapped onto as a UV map, and the props are just whatever you want to go around your previs so you can see going on. So in this case, if I close down the output viewer and I open up the previs stage, you can see here that now we've got the 3D stage here, and there's a little DJ booth box that I added in this morning. which allows you to previs what your visual looks like when you're actually doing the projection mapping. So that then will go through into the output, and we have a new mapping tool called Warper, which allows you to map that in a similar style to the Resolume slice and well, the Resolume mesh drawing tool as well. So if I go into mapping here, sorry, I'm going through this fast, but I want to go through the network as well, so it's a bit quick. So I go into the mapping here. We have Stoner, which is, as you know, it's Stoner. You can go in, you can keystone everything. And then if I open up Warper, Warper is a whole new control panel. I don't know if you guys can see that well. But basically, it allows you to create your own drawings, meshes that can then be mapped. So if I drag on, for example, just the wireframe for now. So this is the wireframe of my set. So I can actually, see the whole thing. If I go into mapping now, I can scroll wheel to zoom in and out. I can right click to move around, and then I can go in and I can left click to create points, which then will become either triangles or rectangles. If I go double click at the end, it becomes a triangle, but if I want to, I can make rectangles too. If I want to create a rectangle, I can just draw it like that. And I can go into select, delete that. So basically, I can now go in and I can draw the mesh out. And I will put in a feature where it will actually just load in a sock as well. But for now, you can just draw around your mesh. And this is useful if you don't have like a highly accurate mesh, like the Tchepe would require. You can, or you just don't have a mesh, you only have 2D content, and you can actually just use this drawing tool. And you can draw out the mesh. I'm not going to draw the whole thing, but you get the idea. I can draw that. Then I can go in and I can transform this. I can transform using, this is if I left click here, it creates a ladder. So this is actually the TouchDesigner parameter ladder put in a widget. So you can put them into widgets. And you can also then go in and you can do point warping on your mesh. So you can go in and you can actually point warp and projection map your set. And then on the output, you'll see that, as a mesh of a wireframe, you can then line up. So with that in mind, so if I go back to show now, if I go to my output view, you can see where I've kind of moved everything out of my output and warped it around and everything. But that would be your projection map set can now go directly into the output without needing any external tools or without needing to use like Camshnapper in situations where you might have a set that's not accurate to a 3D model, which turns out from what I've seen from the community and what people have said to me, that seems to be a common thing, is that they don't have the 3D model for Camshnapper to work, and Kantan doesn't really allow you to UV map in the way that you want to make your creative content. So this is a sort of solution for that. So then once you've done that, you've got your output. You can choose the ID of the monitor you want to output to up here. You've got a tap tempo for doing the BPM, and you can tap to create your match your BPM to whatever it should be. I think the timeline might be paused there because it didn't quite work. And then you can go in and essentially add your own panels here quite easily now through the new UI kit, because the new UI kit is no longer, in the past it was tied to being, it was all anchor based, so it was very difficult to add in new UIs, whereas now you can just put in a panel and put in one of these drop downs, and you can go ahead and create your own setups. So if I just escape out of here, so this is the network. It's very similar to the old version of Simple Mixer. We have up here are the 4 different types of content you can bring in. If I go into the base talks, this is where your talks load in. And you can see here each one has custom parameters, and the resolution gets taken from this output par W. So you can use these variables to just set your resolution to whatever the output is, and then all your toxes will automatically dynamically match to that. So that's the input. I then have UI kit here. So this UI kit is obviously not widgets. The reason I'm not using widgets is because when you have a lot of widgets in heavy user interfaces and you switch pages, there seems to be some VRAM issue where it actually slows down the whole system. So for now, I'm using a very lightweight, it's as light as possible, this UI. It's not designed to look nice, it's designed more to just be as efficient as it could possibly be. And it's also been updated to use the text comp rather than the text top, which means that all of the UI is now much crisper than past UI systems. So yeah, so this has, we have labels and panels. This is the fold out, and the fold out, just each one has its own value, which will turn on and off, and that value can be just hooked up to the display of a container using the children alignment, and you can kind of align things to make your own panels, and they can go into the main container GUI, the GUI user interface, which then has a top left pane, a right pane, a bottom left pane, a bottom mid pane. So if I wanted to add an interface in, I could literally go in here, say, okay, well, I need a fold out to begin with, because I need that to go in. So I can say, okay, in the top left pane, I'm going to add a fold out in here. Oh, forgets me. There we go. I'm going to add a fold out, and let's say I want to have another previz. I could literally copy paste that previz there. I could then just copy that, paste it into the display in the enable, and now I have a whole new panel here called label fold out, which is just a copy of that panel basically. So if you wanted to bring your own panels in or add parameters, you can just do it very quickly with that, the way that interface works. Yeah, so those panels can be modified easily now, and there will, at some point, I'll put a feed mapper in, and there was work on a column Resolute-esque grid launcher, which will be coming in 2.0, but that's a little bit, I'm still working on it because I'm still worried about efficiencies of that. The whole point of the system is to be as efficient as possible and not get in your way when you're creating visuals. It doesn't, whenever tops are not visible, they are all turned off. And there's no VRAM flushing, because VRAM flushing it might cause a stutter. I don't want that either. I want it smooth and steady. So it just has, everything's as simple as it can be, basically. So anyway, so that's the GUI. There's an asset comp for just storing any assets that you might share across the whole interface. There's a mix comp, which is where all the mixing happens. This has one extension, and that just sets the banks based upon what happens in the user interface. And then they all just get fitted, leveled off, comped, crossed, and then out. So it's a simple A/B mixer, very similar to how Scene Changer works. Although I think this is very early. I would probably use Scene Changer in this day and age, but this is still the original system. So we then have the post effects. The post effects get loaded in, and there's the 10 banks, and they just basically have a switch in the post effect. And if they're not on, then they don't cook. So you only cook what is going to the output. So there's a bit of setup in there for that. And then what we got, the previz system. So the previz is very simple. It's just screen and props. Props, anything you want to go around the stage. Screen, anything you want to have content onto. This will be expanded at some point. It's kind of the same as a disguise workflow, where ideally I want to have layer groups in columns in Grid Launcher that would then go to a screen, and then the screen would then go to an output feed, and then the output feed would go out, which would give you the most flexibility. But right now it's a single output system, so the single output system means, there's compromises to be made there. And then inside mapping, if you want to try Author out without using Simple Mixer, you can literally copy paste it out of this, or you can go on GitHub and find it. It's its own projection mapping tool, and it also comes with just the core and just the panel. So if you want, you can put it into VJ or another tool without actually using my UI interface. You can use your own or widgets even. So that's all here, and the core just has all the parameters on it. So that's pretty much ready to go. And it doesn't cook if it's not being used. It's very efficient. Probably way more efficient than Kantan, let's put it that way. But it's yeah, when it's running, I mean, here it's taking up maybe a millisecond. Running at 4K, is it? It was running at 4K. Yeah, running 4K. So it's about a millisecond on my laptop in non-turbo mode at 4K. So it's pretty efficient. And then there's a stoner, which is being updated, it seems. That seems to be quite good now, so that's in there as well. We can edit it there. And then finally, you got the level out and then the container output. And one of the beauties of this is that SimpleMixer uses a single output resolution. Sorry, a single window on the whole output. And that just gives you a little bit more efficiency than using multiple windows on outputs. So it has a little bit of logic here using the bounds of the monitors to ensure that the UI is always on the primary display, and then the output is on whatever other display you choose, 0, 1, 2. And in the future, that would be a feed map system where you'd be able to turn the UI off, and you could have a headless display running all of that. And because this version is new, I'm also working in here on an override system whereby all the parameters that are in the interface are here on this base override. And then that would be another little panel where you can say, bring in a MIDI chop and then just hook up to the UI, because at the moment there's no learning ability for the UI like there used to be. So I'm making that a little bit simpler, because of the old UI system, all the different TouchDesigner builds would break. So different touch builds can break depending on certain things, like drop-down menus are particularly bad for it. So that's gone. And the MIDI override stuff generally broke all the builds, so that's now gone. So trying to keep it as solid as possible for going forward. I mean, obviously this version is an experimental version of TouchDesigner, and it's an experimental version of the software. So this version in particular has probably got a few bugs that need ironing out, but once they're ironed out, I'm planning on keeping that stable, and then we go next experimental in, oh God knows how many months, years. So yeah, so that's pretty much it, I think, in terms of how the interface works. If you want to the last thing, the folder structure. So the folder structure, you have an assets folder, and within that assets folder, you have movies, notch, post effects, and tops. And this is where your top files live. There's a couple of, I'm actually in the old version right now. Yeah, that's where they live. Let me switch to the new version. You also have props. Props could be OBJ or tog files. OBJs, just be careful in the experimental. If you want to use OBJs and you create them in TouchDesigner and you save them, they don't save the UVs into the OBJ. So same as togs, if you want to do TouchDesigner created togs. And then there's screens, very much the same, OBJs and togs. And then is user, which is where I just put any assets that are not going to be imported automatically. They're assets that you can drag into the off assets comp, and then you can just use them across the system by using the global off shortcut off.assets and then the name of your off that you want to get out. And I think there's a whole bunch of lib stuff, which is just where all the external boxes get stored. It stores everything externally, so if you want to work on SimpleMix or improve it, you can improve it without saving the whole project. You can just commit just one tox and say, hey, this had a bug, I fixed it, or hey, this new feature, do a pull request, and you can look into implementing that or improving that basically. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I don't want to storm through that there quite quickly, but yes, it's a bit of a beast otherwise.
Yeah, I'm also again Very, very impressed by your work. Beautiful. And I've been following it, like the Simple Mixer, for a while, and it's been an inspiration for me, for a lot of people, I think, in this kind of area. So thank you for that. And beautiful work on the warping system as well. Like that, I think that also outside of the Simple Mixer, that could generally be a really useful tool for many. Looks really intuitive. So great work, and it's lovely to see all these different approaches. Like all three of you have very different ways of approaching this, and it's very cool to see it right, like in comparison, one after the other. So thank you all very much. So now we're gonna go into the meetup rooms on the left side of Discord. You can see those. So I would say we just go in the same order that we presented. So yeah, Isabel just wants to say something as well in the chat. But yeah, meetup room 1 will be for Emanuel, meetup room 2 for Jack, anti-alias, and the third one for Richard. And also check the chat for what Isabel has written there about the employment contact list. Right. Yeah, so we'll be going into the meetup rooms and then probably meet in the first meetup room then, because people can't like speak only if they're invited here. So we'll meet there later on to just have like an open chat. And yeah, so you can all just go into your breakout rooms or meetup rooms now, and then all the participants, you can just jump from one to the other and ask questions directly. All right. Cool. I'm gonna name them as well, so they're like. If you have any questions or issues, just write them in the chat.